Hi all, Adi here from Hans & Johns. As always, thank you so much for clicking on the video. I'm in deepest, darkest Hampshire and I'm visiting a church called St Mary's in Newton Valence. I'm just hoping it's actually going to be open. Don't know anything about it, I've just found it on Google Maps, so thought we could pop in and explore as we're passing. This handsome man. Hello, sir. It's a lovely greeting, isn't it? Today I'm in the pretty little Hampshire village of Newton Valence and I'm going to look around St Mary's Church. And as I walked through the Lich Gate, one of the first things I saw is this enormous old yew tree in the churchyard. Now this one is thought to be somewhere around 1,000 years old, possibly even older, because obviously no one can tell us exactly when it first started growing, and yew trees are notoriously difficult to age precisely. But there's one interesting tradition surrounding ancient yew trees and churchyards, because a lot of people believe that when you find such a huge ancient yew growing beside a church, that it indicates that this may have been a pagan site of worship long before Christianity arrived. Now, of course, it's only a theory rather than something we can actually prove in the case of this tree, but when you think about just how old it could be, it's certainly an intriguing possibility. There has actually been a church on the site for a very long time, because there is a record of a church here in the Domesday Book which was compiled in the late 11th century, and the building we're looking at here today is rather more complicated than simply being an old Norman church, because the present church contains parts dating from the 12th and 13th centuries, and of course through the generations there's been later additions and alterations over the centuries. And interestingly enough, when I was doing my research, Historic England actually describes the site as being of Saxon origin. So there is a great possibility that people have been worshipping on this spot for well over 1,000 years. I loved this memorial. Look at the intricate carving of the oak tree, and it's in honour of the men who laid down their lives in the Great War from 1914 to 1918. I'm always blown away by the craftsmanship you find in these wonderful old buildings. I really like churches like this because they can look so modest from the outside, and the main part of this church, the main body, is essentially early English, and much of the surviving medieval fabric in here dates from the 13th century. Now there's dozens of memorials around the church, so I will point a few of them out that were quite interesting, but as always, if you'd like to read them, please do pause as I go around. And this one caught my eye. It's a memorial to Robert Boyle Nichols, late Lord of the Manor, and his son William, who was captain of His Majesty's ship Thunderer of 74 guns, in which ship he was with the rest of the crew unfortunately lost in a hurricane off the island of Hispaniola in October 1780. Fascinating. I don't think I've ever seen a ship with 74 guns written on there. So St Mary's is actually a Grade 2 listed building, but the church has undergone quite a few changes over the centuries, which isn't unusual. And one of the biggest changes, of course, came during the Victorian era in the 19th century, and the church was restored in 1871. I do love that candelabra, beautiful. Now, much of the restoration that was carried out here was by the Victorian architect Arthur Bloomfield. So although we're looking at a medieval church, quite a lot of what we see today has been influenced by that Victorian restoration, but there was still a few ledger slabs that have been left intact, which is always really good to see. I'm always fascinated by what you find in these tiny rural churches and all the memorials. I say there are several 18th and 19th century wall monuments, and also several 18th century floor slabs here in the sanctuary. And there's also a small inscribed brass dating from 1616. So if you're wandering around inside, it's always definitely worth taking your time to look up as well as looking down, because sometimes the most interesting things are quite literally under your feet. And there's this lovely altar chair and an embroidered kneeler cushion. Isn't that lovely? And behind here, the piscina, I believe that's 13th century, but it looks like it's got a Norman pillar, so that may have been an original feature of the church. As I was having a look around, the church warden came. I didn't catch his name, so apologies if you're watching this, sir, but he very kindly kept the church open so I could have a look around. And he was telling me that the panels that are in the reredos behind the altar, these three like brass panels, they were actually found a few years ago when they were up in the bell tower replacing some of the bells up there, and they actually found these and thought, oh, they look exactly the same shape as the panels behind, and lo and behold, they fit perfectly. So how long they'd been up there or why they'd been put up there, nobody knows. There's literally no record of them at all. Just to the left of the altar here is a very intriguing memorial to a young man who was just 20 years old, Audley Lempierre. So please do pause that and read that. Very interesting. And then I'm going to head back down through the nave. The church warden very kindly pointed out some interesting things to me before he left. And one of those things that he mentioned was this font. Now, this was only found a few years ago, and it was actually dug up in the manor house. And the manor house is just right beside this church. So obviously they don't know how it got there. It may have been buried to protect it, because a lot of churches where I've been to, they have found stuff that's been rediscovered because it was buried during the Reformation to save it. And there's another piscina here in this little chapel, and also a roll of honour which was written by hand, which is quite unusual. So rest in peace, gentlemen, and thank you for your service. I'm going to show you this plaque, which is really, really sad, dedicated to some children that died from diphtheria in 1871. This is absolutely heartbreaking. So apologies if you can't see with the reflection of the light. Look how young they were. So there's 10 poor little souls that lost their lives. 6 of them were from the Hunt family, 2 from the Hewitt family, Kitty Kemp and an Albert Sawkins. So sad, absolutely heartbreaking. For many years there was 5 bells here in the tower, but a 6th one was added during restoration work in 2022, and the oldest is the treble bell, which was cast in 1560. Into the graveyard there is like a pathway, so I think this may have been the original footpath into the church like 1,000 years ago. let's go and have an explore. Just try not to get stung by all the nettles. Oh, this is so cool. It's truly incredible to think about the generations of people who have walked down this path, and people are still coming here today, and the churchyard itself is also fascinating. Now, there's said to be at least 1,400 burials in this graveyard, and research into burial records has produced a very detailed churchyard book recording many of the graves and those who were buried here. And when we walk around a churchyard like this, we're surrounded by hundreds of years of ordinary people's lives. And of course, if you know me and you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that I had to give the yew tree a hug. Had to embrace some of that ancient energy. The church warden had also mentioned that buried out here was Winston Churchill's private doctor, but I couldn't find his headstone, unfortunately. But I did find this one from the late Lord of the Manor, Captain Chawner, who'd fought in the Crimean War. But as always, I think about the farmers, the labourers, the families, just the ordinary villagers whose names have long been forgotten. But for many of those, their lives would have begun and ended at this local village church. And the squares I'm going to show you on the wall over here, guys, I believe are potlogs which were used by Norman builders. If I'm wrong, then please do let me know in the comments. I just want to take this opportunity though to say a heartfelt thanks to Home St John's Society members who help support the channel. I couldn't do what I'm doing or travel as far as I can without your support. So I do really appreciate from the bottom of my heart each and every one of you. Thank you so much. I'm going to wrap the video up here. I do hope you enjoyed our visit here. But isn't it always the way? The most random ones that I stop at always seem to have the most character. And it is so quiet here and peaceful. Can you hear it? There's nothing. Well, there's birds. That's about it. Absolutely love it. So if you did enjoy today's video, please do like, subscribe, hit the hype button, do all that. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps the channel out. But if you want to support me a bit more, you can use the Buy Me a Coffee link, because as if you've been watching the channel here for a while, you'll know I always make donations to the places that I visit. So thanks again for watching, and I shall see you for the next one. Bye for now.